Hello, in this video we are going to rank the yellowest family on the planet. I saw every season of The Simpsons more than once, but in order not to make the biggest video on the planet and make you all bored, I'm only going to do season 1 through 10 for now. And without further ado, let's go to the 10th best season of the video, the first. I know it's confusing, but the way I'm talking about these seasons is shortened by my favorite episodes of the season. That means the first season has only 13 episodes, which is almost half of the 23 episodes the next seasons will have. And out of these 13 episodes, I only really like 3. So, from the 10 seasons, this season has the fewest episodes that I consider my favorites. These episodes are Mona Lisa, Krusty Gets Busted, and Bart the General. Bart the General is a very fun episode from start to finish, and as much as this Bart is a very different version from the version we've come to love over the course of the series, it's still enjoyable enough for us to become fond of him and care about the challenge of the episode. This is also the episode where Nelson is introduced, but like everything else in this season, it's kind of a beta version of the character, just being a villain, rather than the mood-layered and rather likable character he's become over the course of the show. Krusty Gets Busted is the first episode where my favorite character, Sideshow Bob, is introduced, blaming Krusty for a Quickie Mart robbery, which makes absolutely no sense because that's Krusty, that's not Sideshow Bob, but remains a good episode for the character to be introduced on. In this episode, he already has the voice that I love so much. Kelsey Grammer is amazing and will always be. Mona Lisa is the deepest episode of this season and focuses on Lisa just being plain depressed, not feeling part of the world she lives in and asking questions that make a lot of sense. It's a great study of the character and the way Marge, Bart, and Homer deal with the situation. Not to mention, is also the perfect episode for those lo-fi Simpsons montage style. But I wouldn't consider this season to be very good. In fact, I always skip it when I rewatch the cartoon from the beginning. That's because this season, sort of like when The Simpsons wasn't really The Simpsons, the show was still finding its feet, and for that reason, the whole show is a lot of "this character is going to be much better in the future. Ha! Look how much this character changed." Not to say that the season is bad, it remains a classic of American television. This is the season when Homer didn't even have the voice he has for the rest of the show. The season where even the animation wasn't ready, with the last episode of the season using the wrong animation cells and having the most inconsistent animation of all seasons. However, it's an important season with several characters that became recurring characters as the series went on, and some of them were dropped for good. I'm looking at you, Marvin Monroe, a character who appeared in 4 episodes this season and a few more appearances, but is staying the seat to only make tiny appearances as a joke about how he doesn't appear in the show anymore. That's why I would say Marvin Monroe is the perfect character to show why I don't enjoy this season that much. It's less because of the episode's lack of competence and more because of the fact that it was a new cartoon. It's like the first complete song someone learning to play the instrument play. It's not good, but it's their first time playing, so there's no need to be rude. Resuming everything I just said in a nutshell, meh. In 9th place, we have Believe It or Not Season 2. And it doesn't mean it's a bad season, it's just that we have better ones ahead. This is the season that starts to get good. I always start to rewatch the episodes starting from the season because even though it's still not the best as the show can be, it's still a season full of classics. But out of the 22 episodes this season, I would say I really love only 5 episodes. Bart Gets an F, Bart the Daredevil, One Fish, Two Fish, Blue Fish, Lisa Substitute, and 3 Men and a Comic Book. Bart Gets an F, it's an amazing episode to kick right off the bat with an extremely personal sequence and a study of what Bart really is. As I said, the characters were still trying to find themselves, so an episode where Bart needs to pass a test, but he fails it, even though he tried his best and sacrificed a lot, showed that he's not just another evil character who serves to punch or get punched by the situations. This feeling is very familiar and realistic, and I would say that as much as this episode is not very funny, it's still a very comforting part of the history of the show. Bart the Daredevil is one of the most referenced episodes of the show, but I think the vast majority haven't even seen it. The episode is about Bart being inspired to do an absurd jumps and feats to impress his friends because he saw in a show. He has the absurd idea of jumping on a canyon and reaching the other side, but Homer tries to stop him by talking to him when he accidentally goes down and goes to the hospital. His falling down scene is hilarious, if not violent for a 90s cartoon, but it's fun and that's what matters in the show. One Fish, Two Fish, Blue Fish continues with the sentimental parts, but in such a dark way that I'm surprised how dark the episode really is. It focuses on morality, abandonment, and goodbyes, with Homer eating what we thought was the poison part of a pufferfish and thinking he was going to die. It's extremely sad to see Homer thinking he's going to die. Whether he is saying goodbye to his children, try to be part of their lives one last time, whether he's sitting on his dead chair waiting for the moment, it's touching and beautiful for a character who was so simple at the time. Lisa Substitute is another sentimental episode. We have the episode that kind of feels kind of continuation of the Lisa episode I talked about from the last last season. In the episode, Lisa has a very strong connection with the substitute teacher, who really understands Lisa and tries to explore her intelligence, which compared to Homer is an angel. This is one of the episodes that make you sad at the end, because when the teacher is gone, he really is gone, and we know it. Three Men in a Comic Book is not an emotional episode, but a very entertaining episode from start to finish, with Bart, Milhouse, and Martin pulling together their money to buy an issue of a rare comic book and fighting each other in the treehouse so none of the other two can steal it. It's pretty tense, oddly enough, with a very stylized animation, and three characters who actually have really good chemistry with each other, making for a super memorable episode. If the first season is kind of a taste of what The Simpsons would become in the future, setting up the characters and the ideas of what each other would do, the second season tried to do the same, but at the same time tried to experiment using the idea that the show would not be a real-life TV show. Let me explain. The first season was with the idea that everything in each episode could be done in real life, but they clearly realized that they wouldn't work out, so we have episodes with montage, flashbacks with younger characters, and of course, a scene where Homer jumps off a cliff and we see every detail of what they did with the poor guy. Try to do this in real life to see how much it costs. That's why I would say this season is the more cartoony of the two, and that's why they tried new things, which I prefer. In 8th place we have the 10th season of the show, and because of that we're going to do a super sharp turn, going from a cartoon that more or less wanted to be realistic to a cartoon that doesn't give a damn if break the laws every 5 seconds. A lot of people say that season 9 is one of the worst seasons of the show, precisely because there's that episode with Armington Zarian, which I will talk about it later, and that's why they say season 10 is a season after the bad part of The Simpsons. I kind of agree, but that doesn't mean it's the worst season of the first 10 in my view. Let me explain again. This season made me laugh out loud just thinking about the jokes in the episodes, and they always put me in a good mood. The Wizard of Evergreen Terrace, Treehouse of Horrors 9, Duo in the Wind, Wild Bart's Can't Be Broken, Homer to the Max, and Mom and Pop Art. These are my 6, one more than the last, episodes from this season, and most of them has one very important thing. It's the most Homer possible. The Wizard of Evergreen Terrace, for example, is an episode where Homer thinks he becomes a Thomas Edison type inventor. Oh, isn't the best source of inspiration, by the way? Look it up. Edison was a dick. And spent the rest of the episodes creating a bunch of inventions, and each one being more hilarious than the last, with this amazing scene. It's also from this episode that comes the scene where he shoots Marge with makeup, but he put it in horror mode. The electric hammer scene and many others make this episode not at all sentimental, but hilarious to rewatch. The last few minutes aren't that great, but the jokes themselves are pretty solid still. Treehouse of Horrors 9, being the 9th Treehouse of Horror, it's kind of expected to know what happens. There are 3 stories, each one having nothing to do with the others, but this season in particular has something that made me put it here. Snake, Jailbird, the crooked dude thief with an accent that takes over Homer's body and leads to an unforgettable segment. The others are Towing the Wind is an amazing Homer episode, with him finally looking for what the J means in his name, and after finding out he doesn't know, he goes back and discovering 2 70s farmers who are more mature than Homer, which is why Homer thinks he needs to turn them back in the 70s. It's just a stupid plot and funny, nothing more, all to discover that the J is an abbreviation of J. Wow, what a waste of time. Okay, just 198 more episodes to go. Wild Bart's Can't Be Broken is finally an episode that doesn't focus on Homer, but focuses on the kids. I love this episode because it focuses so much on making the characters who are normally enemies into friends for the purpose of taking down the man. It's a really fun episode and nothing more. The thing I don't like in this episode is Homer, how bad he is in it. Homer is super hateable in it. But hey ho, Homer is nice in the next episode, so... Moment part is... Dude, I didn't even remember this episode right before rewatching it because honestly, it has a pretty forgettable plot, but it's hilarious for the sole reason that the voice actors gave such an amazing performance. He has a lot to do, so he comes out with an episode that has no competition.
Yeah, that's one fine looking barbecue pit. Why doesn't mine look like that? Why? Why must life be so hard?
How's your father's project coming along?
I think he's almost done.
Homer to the Max is a Homer episode from beginning to end, with him seeing a super cool character named Homer Simpson on a TV show, and because of that he starts walking around town pretending to be that same Homer. Then they change the character to be something stupid with nothing smart about it. He decides to change his name to Max Power, the same way I changed my name to Matt because of Matt Groening, creator of my favorite cartoon, The Simpsons. What, there's no joke, that's That's the real start. As you can see, it's something stupid and over the top, and that's why I love this episode so much. It's an adventure only Homer could pull off. With the joke, they're implied that the writers know the audience, kind of talking to the people watching the show, using the episode as a communication device. The 10th season is a time when the cartoon started to have the characters more simplified than they used to be, and that's why I understand the hate that most people have towards it. But I'm going to be the contrarian here and say that this season is not that bad, it's just misunderstood, but it has more okay episodes than awesome episodes, and honestly, it's the beginning of the end for The Simpsons, but still a solid season. Okay, here's the deal. I know it took a huge 180 from season 2 to season 10, but let's do it again, because in the 7th place we have season 3, that is the first season I would call The Simpsons, with standout episodes, better written characters, cameo, and the animation finally more consistent. And here we start to have longer lists, with Start Having That, Mr. Lisa Goes to Washington, When Flanders Fail, Bart the Murderer, Lisa's Pony, Flaming Moe's, and Black Widower. I know the list is long, but wait for the seasons I really love. Start Craving That is the most controversial episode here. Yes, controversial. This is the episode where Michael Jackson made a special appearance.
Who are you?
Hi, I'm Michael Jackson from the Jacksons.
I'm Homer Simpson from The Simpsons.
And because of that, he was taken down several times and is not available on Disney Plus. And that's a shame, because the episode warms my icy heart so much. With Lisa sad again, Homer trying to be better for the family, and a weird ending with someone else taking Michael Jackson's name? This episode is a classic, and as much as it has a controversial person having a cameo, it shows the best of all the characters. Now ignore the Bart stay up with Michael Jackson all night. Really, ignore it. Mr. Lisa Goes to Washington is an episode I would call honest, with Lisa having her vision of what America is really about and politics in general changed for the worse when she discovered that corruption exists. It's a cute and brave episode for the time to make the sitcom character mature, and because it's the United States, bad mouth in the country is even rarer. It's an episode where you feel sad for Lisa, you root for her, and as much as you give up at the winning at the end, you know she won on the inside. When Flanders Fail is a heartwarming episode. You can see that I really love this sentimental episode. The episode also counts as a sad episode, and is the last transitional episode where Homer stopped being a human character, shall we say, and become more of a cartoon, with the transition ending in another episode of this season. In this episode, Homer wishes for Flanders' new left-handed shop to fail, and with that, we see the more human side of Flanders, with the store really failing. We see a lovable character fail, and it's sad, but Homer takes pity and thinks it's his fault, and make every left-hander in town go to the store with a super touching ending. I really love this episode, makes me almost cry. Too bad everything goes back to normal the following week and everybody starting to hate each other again. Bart the Murderer is another classic episode, but this time because it only focuses on Bart being somewhat out of control of the situation, but it also introduces one of the show's most defining characters, Fat Tony. The episode is about how Bart gets scared because he starts working for the Springfield Mafia and thinks that because Skinner left him in detention for a while, the Mafia killed him. Fat Tony is amazing. It's a hilarious story, and with that we have a remarkable episode. Lisa's Pony is, I know, it's another cutesy episode, but the show knew how to do it at a time, man. And relax, this is not the last episode of its kind, not in the slightest. This episode is where Homer is the best he can be. In an episode where Homer does something stupid with Lisa, so he tries to do more than necessary by buying her a pony. However, so he could keep the pony, he works to the point of exhaustion to pay for it. It shows how Homer has a good heart, and most of the things he does is with good intentions. Flaming Moe is a classic, an episode about something that became super popular over the course of the show and remembered so much to the point of having a real version in some of the Universal theme parks. Flaming Homer is a drink that Homer creates, but is stolen by Moe, and Moe starts earning money with the reputation of having created the drink. It's nothing short of a fun episode, but also is a nice exploration of Homer and Moe's relationship. Black Widower is the best episode of the 3rd season, because it's more of what you consider The Simpsons. By that I mean, it has reference to celebrities and movies, it has jokes that only cartoon characters would make, and of course, we have the best cartoon villain of all time, Sideshow Bob, with a super well-crafted murder plot, and not only it's a perfect example how to make a realistic yet comical drama, and how to use characters in the perfect way. If you want to see one episode of each season, this will be the episode from season 3. It's really good. The 3rd season is an incredible season, full of heights and very few lows, but I would say this is not higher on the list because it suffers from the same problem that the first two. It's very realistic. I know this can be controversial, but it's pretty clear that The Simpsons works best when they're doing something that couldn't be done in real life. When a cartoon about a family becomes more than that, it becomes a family living in a cartoon. And we have, in my opinion, the best example of that in season 9. Number 6, 9. 6, 9. Dude, grow up. Season 9 is everything that made me love The Simpsons and make it 1,000 times better. We have shocking episodes, horror episodes with striking segments, social criticism, and a travel episode, and absurd situations that only the writers of the time would have done it right. I would make a list within a list showing the best episodes from worst to best. But even so, the worst episodes are only worst here because there are even better episodes later. This is getting a little confusing, wait a second. Ta-da! This is how we are now. King of the Hill is with this episode we're starting to get in the type where the best way to show why you like the episode so much is just showing scenes from the episode. This episode is just really funny. It tells the story of how Homer becomes sort of a mascot from a protein bar company and is forced to climb the mountain because he wants to impress Bart. But the amount of moments they manage to do in this plot is amazing. I would show them, but you know, copyright exists. Okay, just one scene.
Gime? What's a gime? Oh, a gime.
Classic. Lisa the Skeptic is another episode of Study of Lisa, but this one ends with a social critique. Yes, I know this sounds pretentious, but the episode is about how they find what appears to be a skeleton of an angel. Spoiler, it wasn't. It was a fake skeleton planted by a company for marketing purposes. But until then, we have the town angry at Lisa for trying to find out if the angel was real or not, while Homer tried to abuse the fact that the angel is in his garage, along with the population getting angry at Lisa for trying to be logical. There are several pieces that come together very well to make an incredibly remarkable and thought-provoking episode. Thus Buzz is just the opposite. This episode needs you to turn off your brain to enjoy it, and sometimes that's okay. It's not like everything in the world needs to be intellectual. This episode is about the Springfield high school kids stranded on a desert island and having to deal with themselves. It's a really good way to get these kids to have a common conflict and act like kids without having an adult to explore the conflict. It's like an episode of Bluey, but like in real life. And remember how I said you need to turn off your brain to like this episode? Well, this is how it ends.
So the children learned to function as a society, and eventually they were rescued by, let's say, Mo.
What? Treehouse of Horrors 8 is a fantastic way to make a Halloween story. No, seriously, there's a fantastic explosion with a nuclear bomb in one of them, and the way they cast Homer as survival is hilarious, and the way he discovers it, it's comedy gold.
Everyone's gone! Little Bart. Little Lisa. Little Marge. And the rest.
The witch segment is just okay, but the segment where Bart is a fly is hilarious, and the beginning with Homer buying the teleporter never fails to make me laugh. All in all, it's a pretty good episode, but the variety and wit of every joke makes one of the best Halloween episodes for me. Here's the thing, I know you're already breaking style to make a list within a list, however, the next 4 episodes on this list are from the category I call hilarious to the point of crying with laughter, and there's nothing to do much in terms of analysis because they're just incredibly hilarious episodes. So there's a list within a list within a list. The Joyous Set tells the story of a cult going to Springfield and everyone there, because it's Springfield, falls for them and hilarious thing happens. Then the episode is over.
Would you rather have beer or complete and utter contentment?
What kind of beer?
You might even say that this episode has a super cool critique of cult culture and such, but I won't listen because to me this episode is just funny and nothing else, but it's still hilarious. The Cartridge Family is indeed a socially critical episode because it criticizes the easy way that guns are obtained in the United States. It's an episode that puts a gun in Homer's hand, and you'd think they say guns are okay as long as they're out of Homer's hand, but no, the episode makes fun of the entire US gun culture. It is very well done.
And that's how, with a few minor adjustments, you can turn a regular gun into 5 guns.
The City of New York vs. Homer Simpson, it's not a critical episode, but the episode is one of the funniest episodes in the cartoon history. No kidding. Every second there's a new joke, and I could spend all the time just showing joke after joke, but like I said, copyright. If you manage to get your hands on this episode, please watch it. It's very funny. And the same goes for Trash of Titan. This was the first episode I ever saw of the show when I was 7 years old, and without using my nostalgia, I would say that this episode has also made me laugh to start to finish. And they show that they now know that they are in a cartoon, with the ending more who gives a crap of all time, with them following with Patrick says and taking the city and moving somewhere else. Whew. Okay, now let's talk about cute things again. Lisa's saxophone is a cute episode because baby Lisa is so cute and Yardley Smith has a voice so cute it hurts.
Wait for the future!
But cuteness aside, it's a very well written episode that encapsulates pretty much everything that makes me love this show. It's a flashback episode, but it's done with such mastery, not only showing the hardships of taking care of Bart and Lisa to Homer and Marge when they were younger, but also shows how Bart has turned into the attention-seeking kid and blaming the American school system for this. It's a family episode that I love. If it's not a little too American, it has reference that most outside of the US won't pick it up, but it's a fun, touching, and cute episode. If you only want to see one episode of the season, watch this one. But here's the thing. Now that I've talked about all the episodes, there is one episode that everyone hates, and it's part of the season, The Principal and the Pauper. The Principal and the Pauper is a hated episode by many, including the voice actor who voiced the character who was, in quotes, destroyed by the writers. The episode tells the story of how the school principal, Seymour Skinner, is actually an imposter and has taken the place of the real Seymour. Seymour is actually called Armin Tamzarian and is a veteran who fought alongside Seymour but was too sorry to tell Seymour's mother that he was missing and took his place. But then the real Seymour comes back to explain everything to everyone. A lot of people hated this episode, including the episode itself that just ignored what happened and nobody ever mentioned it again except as a joke. Those who hate this episode say it destroyed the character for no reason, and those who defend it, well, they don't exist. Honestly, I don't care that much. Not to the point of making hours of content hating on it. The episode is still really funny, but it's worth it for what he has done with the character? I don't know. You decide. It's not of my favorite episodes anyway, so I haven't mentioned it until now. If you came to this video just to get some good episodes to watch later on, or just to get to know the series by its best, well, start taking notes now, because from now on, we'll have the best episodes of the most famous American TV show. And that's why I'm going to make a top 10 of each season, because if not, I would make a top 15 of them or something like that. These episodes are that good. So the rules have changed a little bit. It's still going to be the best seasons, but each season we have a top 10 best episodes. Understood? Okay, let's go. Oh, and thanks to all of you who saw the last video. You have no idea how much that meant to me. Anyway, number 10, Part of Darkness. It's an odd episode of this show, but it didn't have to be. In fact, I think this is episode with Bart suffers for the most, even though he didn't do anything. But it seems like everything in this episode is standard Simpsons, so there's nothing about it that stands out. But there's something that makes it different. How dark it is for no reason. Telling the story of how Bart becomes alienated from his friends because of a swimming pool and a broken leg, it shows Bart being psychotic, and at the end of the episode doing parody of Rear Window. It shows a bizarre episode that I love for trying to do something new. Number 9, Treehouse of Horror 5 is one of the best episodes of all the horrors episodes in the show, simply because it's so memorable. The 3 segments have their merits, incredible jokes that stayed with everyone who saw them, but everything gets better when they make one of the most hilarious parody of making parody of The Shining, with Homer acting as the villain, and it's perfect. The episode has also incredible performances for the voice actors, making it one of the best parts of the show. Number 8, Lisa on Ice is a cute episode. As you can understand it's my kinda thing, and that's why it's here. The episode is about the rivalry between Bart and Lisa, making an episode that looks like it's going to end with a terrible conflict, but ends up being one of the cutest endings on the show. Number 7, Homer Batman is an incredible, relevant episode today. The episode shows from Homer's point of view how a simple misunderstanding can wreak havoc in someone's life. It's incredibly relevant today in the era of cancellations, when people say bad things about you even though they don't know anything and just want to make you feel bad. Number 6, Homer the Great is a classic from the first second to the last. Dude, I know appearing in the game doesn't mean quality, but this episode is so memorable. There's a whole part of the map referencing the episode and an outfit too. It's full of iconic scenes, full of iconic songs, and such a funny ending that it makes this episode close as one of the funniest episodes of all time. Number 5, and Mag makes 3. You wanna cry? So let's cry. The episode is a flashback episode and tells how Homer sacrificed the best job in the world and his friendships just to make Maggie have a good life. And every time he misses or feels bad for his choices, he reminds himself that he does everything for Maggie. He makes you cry and appreciate what Homer really is. Homer the Clown is the worst episode to put after the last sentence, but it's an episode that takes the whole story and confuses everyone by making a story that has nothing to do with how it started. And instead of ending in a stupid way like the vast majority of recent episodes end up doing, it's something welcome, with Homer wanting and going to a calm college and then being mistaken for Krusty, which makes him being wanted by the mafia for $48. Incredible. Number 3, Bart vs. Australia is one of the few episodes that didn't cause controversy, because it took everything that make Australia beautiful in an interesting country and flush it down the toilet and make one of the most absurd episodes, with them saying that Australia has a different flag, use dollar reduce, and talk like freaks. It's hard to explain why I like this episode so much. It could be how absurd it is, or it could be because Bluey made me love Australia so much. Number 2, Lemon of Troy is another episode focusing on Bart, but instead of focusing on him and his family, we focus on him in a stupid dispute that ends up one of the funniest and most entertaining episodes of the series. The childlike soul is amazing in the episode, and you feel like the writer is just making a story about kids being kids. It's also in this episode that we are shown for the first time the neighboring town of Springfield, Shelbyville. As much as they are arch enemies, they have a lot in common. It's a really fun episode. Nelson and Martin together is also really fun. The way they are showed the story at the end is still pretty funny. An episode you watch when you want to watch The Simpsons.
This whole raid was as useless as that yellow lemon-shaped rock over there. Wait a minute. There's a lemon behind that rock!
Who Shot Mr. Burns Part 1 is... wow, this episode was ahead of its time. Nowadays, the cartoon does make some really tense and heavy episodes, but even in season 6, they did manage to make a thriller so big and well crafted that they still try to do the same to this day. The episode is about how Burns become the villain of the show for a while longer, and this time he makes everyone a lot angrier. And throughout the entire episode, we see everyone hating on him and threatening to kill him, when the episode has some of the darkest scenes from this cartoon, with the whole city being suspect of shooting Mr. Burns. See the city in the dark, full of shadows and purple tones, all in silence. It's too somber for a cartoon, but it's still incredibly fun to watch. I love this episode, and a lot of people do too. The 6th season. Is a season of the show became another show. Just like the next season, the show started to take risks, and that's why it ended up being the best part of the show to this day. Everyone who says they love The Simpsons is usually talking about this season or the next, so let's talk about it. Going from a season that experimented a lot to another season that experimented a lot with the show, but this time they tried to break the characters to their limits to see what happens, but not before making one of the best episodes I ever seen that had everything to go wrong. Number 10, 22 Shorts About Springfield is a phenomenal episode. No, seriously, it created a phenomenon with the steam ham scene. The episode is about 20 stories. Yes, I know the title is wrong, but it's justified with 20 of the best, most connected stories of all time. And there's steam hams, one of the best segments, if not the best segment the show ever created, with Skinner and his supervisor having a lunch but everything goes wrong, and Skinner's lies to cover himself up with the worst excuses ever, but somehow he always works. This episode had everything to go wrong, but it did it so well. I don't even think any other episode came close to it. Each segment has a transition that is based on the previous segment. It really feels like Springfield is a town with a lot of stories. We just don't have a lot of time to keep seeing them all. And Number 9, Marge Not Be Proud is another cute episode. Okay, I know I said enough cute moments, but this one is so well done that it stopped being just cute and becomes one of the best episodes with the most touching scenes of the show. It's a Christmas episode, and instead of being a whole cutesy story where a family gets in trouble, it's an episode about Bart and crossing the line with Marge, and you really feel the way that Marge is feeling. The episode is how Bart steals a game from inside the mall and gets caught. You can feel the dread from a child who knows he's going to let his parents down. It's pretty tense and shows that Marge is more than just a grumbling machine, and it's shown in one of the most realistic episodes. And it all started because Milhouse was selfish. Number 8, King Size Homer is such a great episode that I had to rewatch it even though I knew exactly what was gonna happen. It's an episode where Homer is trying to gain weight so he can stay home on disability, and it works, with a montage of him getting fatter and fatter, done with the mastery of an 80s montage scene. This episode is full of classic scenes, with one of them appearing in the Simpsons Return game. The only thing I would say is, let's say, different to the point of drawing attention to it is Mr. Burns, who in this episode is strangely nice, asking Homer what he wants to do and helping him. He also helps the plan to exercise, and at the end paying Homer to do a the losing weight thing. But if in exchange for a good Mr. Burns we have one of the most outstanding episodes of the cartoon, I would honestly take the outstanding episode, and this one delivers. Speaking of delivery, my delivery has arrived. Or not. I don't remember ordering anything. Didn't I? What's going on today? Number 7. Homer There's Meters is an episode that I was a bit conflicted to put it on here. Not because it's bad, but because it doesn't sound like a classic to me. But then I remember the scene where Homer imitates Mr. Burns and I immediately remember why I like it so much. Because they made Homer the most relatable character, but somehow something that only Homer would do. Homer being at Mr. Burns' service, it's what I call a machine gun of moments, when the episode itself doesn't have much of a plot, but every scene makes you laugh your ass off. Number 6. Who Shot Mr. Burns Part 2. It's no better than the first one, of course. However, it remains an incredible closer. For those who don't know, this was a whole promotion, the first part being the last episode of the last season, and the second, this one, being the first episode of season 7. And because they had so many suspects, there was a lot that could go wrong, but they managed to make an episode that did it really well. It's not only funny, somehow tense, and ends the mystery in an unbelievable way. Number 5, Mother Simpson, is an episode that explains why Homer is the way he is, and just as the last episode was serious, it could get really bad, but it's a very cute episode. A mother-child relationship is something very difficult to get right, so it's a miracle that they did it well. Explaining why Homer's mother was never there was genius, not going to the typical way of demonizing her by giving a fair justification. Overall, I can't say much more for the lack of time, but it's a really solid episode. Number 4, Summer 4'1". It's one of the Lisa's best episodes and one of my favorites. It's a travel episode, but not out of the country, and focuses on something totally different from the place itself, but Lisa's relationship with friends. Of course, he doesn't have many, and putting her in the middle of new groups is very interesting, especially since she makes friends, however, being someone she is not. Milhouse in this episode is hilarious, the animation is beautiful, Lisa's outfit is amazing. I love this episode from start to finish, and I will always rewatch it whenever I can. I also have a t-shirt with the outfit of the episode. You know that's a woman's shirt, right? Shut up! Number 3, Treehouse of Horror 6 has 3 segments, as always, although there is one segment that is so good that it overshadows all the others. The segments where Homer goes 3D. It's amazing, and for the first time the cartoon appeared in 3D in 1995, it's really good. This is where we also have the Freddy Krueger segment and the mascots that come to life. It's just a very memorable episode. But the idea of Homer turning real and going to the planet Earth is surreal. Like, imagine if I just turn out Rio out of nowhere. That would be insane. Number 2, Lisa the Vegetarian is the Lisa's best episode in my opinion, and I don't say that just because it was one of the first episodes I ever seen, but because the episode is the episode where Lisa learns a lesson and it's very relatable for me as a vegetarian. This episode is about how Lisa can't understand that people eat meat and wants to make everyone a vegetarian like her. She learns from Paul and Linda McCartney to respect other people's ideas, and everyone is happy at the end. Number 1, Bart Sells His Soul is an episode that I show to my friends when I want to recommend The Simpsons to them, because it's the episode that started to treat Bart in such a real way, but so dark at the same time, making it an unforgettable episode. It's about how Bart doesn't believe in soul, and he sells Milhouse a piece of paper that says Bart Simpson's soul, and so he starts to feel empty and really starts to suffer from it. I know that kind of episode don't apply to people who believe in a soul, but at the same time, it's a great episode of Bart reacting to a problem in a life that he doesn't know how to deal with. It makes him more human, you know? It's an amazing episode that I never get tired of watching it. Season 7 is a really good season. They took advantage of the fact that the show had been on the air for so long and started experimenting with deeper stories with messages and characters breakdown that make it kind of a risky season. What if Lisa was wrong? What if Bart wasn't the character with the most attention? What if Homer had to deal with Mr. Burns on a daily basis? The only way this could work is if the episodes were good. And guess what? The episodes were amazing. This season could have failed in many ways, but as much as we didn't know it, this was the pinnacle of Simpsons for a long time according to many people. Not for me though, I find season 4 better. I love season 4. This is where one of the best episodes of the show come from, but there is a serious problem with this season. There's so many good episodes that it's hard to choose just 10. I really want to keep changing up this list because there's so many good and classic episodes, such as number 10, Camp Krusty is the first of these classics episodes, and I will start by saying that this episode was supposed to be the first movie of the show, but it was pushed so many times that they reused much of the script for this episode. You can see this since the first 10 minutes are not inside Camp Krusty, where the name of the episode came from, but focusing on the adventure of the children starting with the summer vacation, and it's quite fun. When we arrive in Camp Krusty, it goes from episode 7 to an episode 9, because it's one darkly funny joke after the other. Homer losing weight and getting better looking once the kids are out is another funny part. I would say that this episode has 2 plot lines that blend together in such a perfect way that make this episode a classic, and of course it appears in The Simpsons Hit and Run. Wow, did a Simpsons episode appear in a Simpsons game? What a shock! Number 9, Duffless is another episode that focuses on 2 stories, but to me, those 2 stories are too weak to make a whole episode about them. But somehow, they managed to make these 2 stories that have nothing to do with each other and make one of the most interesting classic episodes of the series. The first storyline is about how Homer is not drinking beer for a month, and the second storyline is about Lisa experimenting on Bart to win a competition. Homer ends up not drinking so much, which they backtrack on and start drinking again, and Lisa loses the competition. I mean, nothing happens. But it's so much fun to watch that it makes this episode a classic. It's classic joke after classic joke. Number 8, I Love Lisa is one of the 2 episodes that is focused on Hal Wiggin, son of Chief Wiggin. And because of the character is so lovable, and it was at the time where the writers knew what they were doing, the episodes end up being so perfectly charming that it carries the entire episode.
So, do you like stuff?
It tells the story of how, on Valentine's Day, Ralph is the only one in Lisa's class who hasn't let a little card, so Lisa gives one to him, and that makes Ralph create a crush on Lisa and stays behind the poor thing for the rest of the episode. The episode is cute, well-meaning, and realistic, and it ends in a way that warms my heart, and for that, it deserves a spot on the list. Number 7, Treehouse of Horror 3 has a segment in black and white, and just the fact that they managed to make a segment all in black and white, and it's just as fun as a color one, show how talented they really were. It's not just King Homer, there's a zombie segment with classic scenes.
Dad, you killed the zombie Flanders.
You was a zombie?
There's the Krusty doll with one of my favorite scenes.
God!
The doll's trying to kill me and the toaster's been laughing at me. Ew, dog water.
It's hard to talk about this episode because it's that kind of just hilarious scene after hilarious scenes, and unless you tell one joke after the other, there is no way to show how fantastic this episode is. Go see it. After this video is over, Number 6, Itchy Scratchy the movie is what happens when the writers try to make a movie and fail, and they use the supposed experience of people who would go to see said movie. The episode is about how Homer punishes Bart and prevented him from seeing the most anticipated movie of the greatest cartoon of all time, Itchy and Scratchy. The whole episode is just Bart suffering, seeing the positive reaction from everyone around him. It feels like it's one of those stories where the person learns their lesson at the end of the episode, and it kind of is, but it's executed masterfully. Mwah. Number 6, New Kid on the Block tells the story of a crush on an older girl. I know some of you won't relate, but I know that those who will find this episode incredibly embarrassing, because Bart arc so realistic it's embarrassing. The episode also has a beautiful animation with a super well done ending that make this episode hilarious and fascinating as the vision of the mind of a 10-year-old boy named Bart. Lisa's first word is super cute. As you can see, I love cute episodes, which is why an episode about how Lisa learns to speak for the first time pleases me so much. It's also a hilarious episode with a small version of Bart and Homer with hair, and the ending that makes you cry, even as an adult male. If there is an episode you should watch from this video, watch this one and cry like I always do. Number 3, Homer's Triple Bypass is an oddly dark episode for the show. Like that episode of the first few seasons with the fish, this episode focuses on Homer thinking he's going to die, but instead of being just sad, it's something cute at the same time worrying. And even then, they managed to make jokes with the subject where Homer has 2 heart attacks, but they are tasteful jokes. Be healthy, don't be like Homer is the message of the episode. Number 2, Last Exit to Springfield is a classic episode, but it's popular not because it's the funniest, though it really is funny, but because it's a really smart episode. The episode is about how Homer becomes the head of a union, and what's better than seeing Homer against the most powerful man in Springfield and winning? Lisa singing, Homer asking for a burrito, Burns being the Grinch. Has a lot of amazing memorable jokes, and that's why I love it from start to finish. Number 1, Mr. Plow is such a classic episode that I don't even know what to say about it. With all honesty, what makes this episode so popular is something so simple, but it doesn't take away its merit. The episode is really funny, and that's it. There isn't a message or a moment that makes you cry. It's just a bunch of hilarious moments, one after the other, that got stuck in the minds of everyone who sees it. It's an unbelievable amount of jokes per minute, and is almost unbeatable even by the show itself. It's one absurd quality joke after an amazing quality joke. The fact that this episode exists is a blessing, considering that we could exist in a dimension that one of the best episodes of television did not exist. Top Simpsons for sure. In a nutshell, season 4 is the messiest and strangest season of the show, with absurd scenes and moments that would never be put in a real life TV series. So we have parody scenes and scenes where Homer almost died, but at the same time we have cute scenes with down to earth episodes. It's kind of like the cartoon stopped being a TV show like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and became a real cartoon. This season is hilarious, and I'm sure most people who love this cartoon will say that this season was a big influence in their decision to make this their favorite cartoon. There's There's one more episode that many people consider one of the best, but I didn't put it in because I simply didn't have time to talk about everyone. Marge vs. Monorail. I love this episode, but having seen it so many times, it's hard to give an unbiased opinion as the joke has already lost their flair, and the plot's so ingrained into my brain. But do know that I still love this episode. I just personally think there are better ones. Okay, first, I know this is the season with, according to many people, 2 of the best episodes of all time, but this video is about my opinion, and as much as I agree that these 2 episodes are incredible and 2 of the best things that came out of the show, they can't get past what I consider the best season. After all, this video is about my stupid head. Let's take everything that makes The Simpsons great in these more recent seasons and let's make a mix and somehow still make a good season. Again, not my favorite, but I know it's the best season. Number 10, Treehouse of Horror 7 is an episode that I personally don't think is that great, but after seeing the reaction of people on the internet, I kinda got convinced. The episode, as usual, has 3 segments. The first one is the best of them because it's the darkest and most bizarre one. Seriously, it's about Bart's Siamese twin who is a terrible child and that's why they locked him up in the attic. The segment continues with bizarre scenes until it's revealed that Bart was the terrible child and the 2 switch places and everyone except Bart is happy at the end. As you can see, it's really dark. The second segment where Lisa creates civilization is okay, but nothing more. And the third one where aliens become presidents of the United States is amazing and has a message of it doesn't matter who you vote for, everything sucks anyway. I adore it. Number 9, El Viaje Misterioso de Nuestro Homer is an episode with such a beautiful animation. Seriously, it's not often that we see a show using different trippy moments, shadows and colored skies in really beautiful scenes. It's a very touching episode as well that looks more like an episode of The Twilight Zone instead of The Simpsons, with a short story where Homer has a trip and starts to think Marge is not his soulmate. The end is beautiful. The whole episode is beautiful from beginning to end, honestly. Number 8, The Itchy and Scratchy and Poochie Show is an episode where Homer is part of the Itchy and Scratchy cartoon group. It's worth remembering that Itchy and Scratchy is kind of the way the writers saw the Simpsons cartoon itself. The writers of Itchy and Scratchy putting a new character for the surge of popularity, it was a cynical way for the writers to deny the introduction of characters just because the executive wanted to. It's a great episode that starts and ends in a great way. Milhouse Divided is an episode that knocks on my door because it tells the story of a divorce. Coming from a family that had a divorce, it's very relatable. Whether it's the father suffering to take care of his and his son's life, being the mother overcompensating and letting the child do too much, it's all very realistic. And that's why I consider one of the best episodes. Not just because it's hilarious, because it's one of the best depictions of divorce I ever seen. Number 6, Homer vs. the 18th Amendment is an episode that can be defined as it ends.
To alcohol, the cause of and solution to all of life's problems.
But as the next item on the list, this episode has the new character who gives an incredible performance. Rex Banners began investigating Homer's scheme to get the child drunk again once alcohol was banned, and he is hilarious. The whole episode is basically a critique of prohibitions, showing that it's a stupid censorship over things that people don't like. I love this episode, it's worth seeing. Number 5, You Only Move Twice has Ranky Scorpio, one of the most memorable characters in all of The Simpsons, and he only appears once. This episode is so good that it's considered one of the best episodes of all time, and is well deserved. In the episode, they move to a factory city, that is, the city that residents are largely from an industry that belongs to a supervillain that Homer is employed. The jokes write themselves. There's a lot to talk about, but I don't have much time because as you can see, this video is long enough. Number 4, The Springfield Files isn't better than the last episode, I know, but it's better for me, so sorry if my opinion is different from yours. I love this episode because it has what I love the most in the world, horror. It makes it so many hilarious scenes, a mystery, and such good animation that you're blown away from start to finish. And I love this episode, even though I know what's gonna happen, but hear that whale sound never fails to be hilarious.
Cheese it, the feds!
Number 3, Homerphobia, was one of the most well-received episodes by everyone who saw it. The episode is about how Homer gets mad at a guy for just being gay, and starts to think Bart is gay. John is a kind and lovable guy that everyone would love to be friends with, and Homer gets angry even though he has no reason to be, which was common at the time until today in fact. This episode was congratulations for the gay community for not showing the stereotyped version of gays, and make a cool character gay. Homer is the problem, not John. I honestly don't have much to say about it, I just really like the episode. episode. Number 2, Hurricane Nettie is an episode that tried to destroy the life of one of the least deserving characters of all time. The episode is about how the hurricane hit Springfield, but the whole town is intact except for Flanders' house. The episode then switched to Flanders rethinking his fate and why this happened to him. It's also where one of the funniest scenes of the cartoon comes out, with Nettie simply destroying everyone with a fit of rage that is incredibly delivered by Harry Schroeder. Like everything else in this season, this was a way for the show to make fun of something established in the show, and that's why we have an amazing episode from this season. Number 1, Homer's Enemy is an episode that I would say is the second best episode of all time to this show to this day. There is one, in my humble opinion, better later on, but this episode is close because it does what no other writer has managed to do since. It made Homer face off with a real life person. You know how Homer has everything easy, has a good neighbor, 2 cars in the garage, and can live traveling like it's nothing? So, this episode tries to break this whole concept. Instead of just a character saying that it doesn't make sense like other cartoons would, in this one, they create a whole character that suffers in a realistic way and hits with Homer once and for all, giving one of the best dialogues and depth of the cartoon. I know it will never have another episode like this in The Simpsons, because this has to be top Simpsons for a long time, because this episode was a product of its time. Amazing episode, especially for the fans of the show. Overall, I would say this season is a pretty cynical season. The whole season makes fun of American culture and TV culture, the Christian religion, everything that makes the United States the United States. This season came from 1996, when all of the teens were going to the breaking American standards, where living, getting a job was more expensive, and so it was easy to see that the idea from which The Simpsons was born is no longer viable. Making fun of it is genius. It's a strangely relevant season these days. I know this is not the most popular season, or the season that everyone says is the best of the series. In fact, the season that everybody says is the best came in second place for the classic episodes, Homer's Enemy and You Only Move It Twice. But I prefer the 5th, and one of the reasons is the episode, number 10, Bart Get Famous. It's that kind of meta episode that analyzes the character fame in such a precise way, and I always loved for it. In the episode, Bart, by accident, creates a catchphrase that he becomes really famous for saying it. The episode is clearly using the phrase created in the episode as a commentary on the eat my short phase that the character was on, being a deeper character, but the audiences just want him to do the same thing over and over again. It's a great episode that kind of speaks with the audience, and I always respect it for it. Number 9, Sweet Skinner's Badass Song is not one of the best episodes of the show. Yes, I know, I started talking this season the worst way possible, but this video is about my opinion, and I would say it's something. I love this episode because it explores Skinner and Bart's enemy/friend relationship of order and chaos, and that makes this episode super interesting to watch. However, there's nothing about it that makes it amazing. It's just nice seeing the best version of 2 of the best written characters in the story of the show. Number 8, The Boy Who Knew Too Much. It's another episode that focuses on the relationship between Skinner and Bart, but this time Skinner kinda isn't part of the episode, and at the same time he is. Let me explain. The episode tells how Bart did not go to school one day and is the witness of a crime, but he can't be the witness in the case, because if he does, Skinner will find out he didn't go to school. The whole episode is full of scenes where Skinner is chasing Bart like the Terminator, and Skinner in this episode is just perfect. A great episode for one of my favorite characters. Number 7, Homer Goes to College. It's an incredible episode that I had to put on the list. The entire episode is predicated on the idea that Burns isn't going to fire Homer because he's not a nuclear physicist. You know, the thing he's supposed to be an inspector. The episode opens with one of the best introductions to a plot I ever seen, with the inspection of the power plant, with one funny scene after the other. Number 6, Rosebud is for me the most Mr. Burns episode possible, because he's kinda the center of the episode. The episode is all about his teddy bear that right off the bat we already have references done with one of the best way possible, with reference to the supposedly greatest movie of all time, Citizen Kane. It's also shown why people love him so much when he refuses to give money to the one thing he loves the most, and even though they are offered money, the family refuses because of Maggie. It also shows why we love Homer so much. Number 5, Treehouse of Horror 4 is an special that is special because it only has one special part. The first segment with the donut is certainly one of the most striking of the entire cartoon, not only because it appeared in the game as a special outfit, but also made Flanders a little more interesting. The segment is about how Homer sells his soul for a donut, but if he doesn't finish the donut, the devil can't take his soul, but Homer eats it anyway and goes to a trial. The whole trial is hilarious because it has Phil Hartman as Lionel Hutz, giving one of the funniest scenes I ever seen. If the whole episode was just this segment, I would say the episode is amazing. But then there's Vampire Burns and the Bar Twilight Zone episode, and you have one of my favorite episodes of the show. You can see why I consider this season the best. Number 4, Marge on the Lam is one of the very few episodes focused on Marge, and it shows why. The show was starting to try new and more absurd things, and Marge is too self-assured and stuck her own way and tried to do adventures out of the ordinary. But in this episode, another reference to another movie, she leaves one of the adventure, and because of that, we have one of the most remarkable scenes of the show. And honestly, just seeing Marge have such a loose adventure and seeing her kids make her the main character of the episode is fun from beginning to end. Number 3, Homer and Apu. I know Apu is frowned upon these days for some reason, but in this episode he is hilarious with several perfect scenes. The episode is full of stupid scenes, but you know it's stupid, so it's okay, cause you feel you in the joke when they make that kind of joke. It's hard to say more than that, because the episode is nothing more than a hilarious adventure. It has nothing to make it out of the ordinary, apart from, of course, the fact that we have a celebrity as a second storyline. Number 2, Deep Space Homer. We're almost there. It's the kind of episode that by the title you already know is gonna be a hilarious episode, and with such a huge check, it's to be expected that it would be hard to pull off such a good episode. But the episode manages, showing an adventure so absurd that it somehow managed to make an episode so absurd that you think, oh, they know what they were doing. Couple that with all the reference Dan Castellaneta perfect deliveries, and you have a landmark episodes that you can never get in any other way. Try as they might with newer episodes where they go to space. Number 1, Cape Fear is hilarious. I know it's kind of anticlimactic to end this way, but for me, this is the funniest episode I ever seen of the show, and every time I rewatch it, I laugh my ass off because it's my type of humor, and to be honest, it pretty much encapsulates what I consider to be the best of The Simpsons. It has my favorite character, hilarious jokes, references, a musical, and the character acting proper, let's say. The entire episode is a continuation of the Sideshow Bob Pursuit of Bart, but this episode is made with such a mastery referencing. The whole episode is also a super clear nod to the movie Robert De Niro, Cape Fear, and the soundtrack from the movie is used here. And as much as I still like the movie, the soundtrack only reminds me of Sideshow Bob now because of this episode. This for me is the best episode of the show without a doubt, and will always be, because try as they might, this episode is going to be the perfect combination of everything that made me love the show. And again, I know that the 5th season is not considered the best, but I like season 5 the most because for me at least, it was the season that encapsulated everything that made me love The Simpsons. It was a cartoon that knew it was a cartoon, but it still contains cute episodes that study each character in such a well-written way that it makes you rage how good they are. And with that, we are done with what I think is the first part of the best seasons video. And for now, that's it. A little different than I thought it would come out. But after rewatching all 226 episodes of this show, I learned one thing. I never noticed how much the show changed over time. Yes, you can compare the first season and the 10th season and you know it's different, but doing a marathon, watching 12 episodes a day, really made me feel how the show has changed over the years. It made me appreciate how this show went from being another 19 style sitcom and started to break patterns, move audiences, and make commentary on the US, TV, and culture in general, by not only being a funny show with funny things happening, but also become a time capsule of the 90s, not only showing the people what it was like, but also showing how the show itself changed culture. See each writer's change and seeing how certain writer changed the show to be his own way made me really appreciate the show like a bunch of friends putting this family through funny situations. Reviewing all the episodes made me love the cartoon all over again, and with that said, I'm exhausted, so